Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a really fascinating, kind of unexpected story from American industrial history, the City of Industry, California.
Yeah, it's a unique one.
Our mission, really, is to figure out how this, well, frankly, bizarre corporate city, it's got thousands of businesses, practically zero residents, how it became this, essential hub for American computing. We're talking everything.
Yeah.
Building those first cheap PC clones back in the 80s, all the way up to assembling, these incredibly expensive GPU servers that are powering AI right now.
It's a pretty wild dive into supply chain logistics, hyper-local
Yeah.
policy, just the sheer absurdity of it all.
Mm-hmm.
The City of Industry, COI, let's call it, it's structurally, well, almost artificial, was designed in a lab just for commerce.
Right.
So we're digging into historical records, trying to understand how global trade shifts, these huge waves of immigration, and a real focus on specialization turned this, what was basically a logistics hub.
Just warehouses.
Pretty much, yeah, into this high-value tech assembly center. And it kind of defied gravity, It wasn't Silicon Valley.
It really feels like the ultimate corporate ghost town when you drive through it.
Yeah.
Just endless rows of these, massive, immaculate concrete tilt-up buildings, office parks.
Yeah.
But you barely see a soul walking around.
Exactly. And that lack of people, that's actually the key. That's the whole story almost.
Okay.
So our mission today, unpack how COI managed to stay relevant through all the big shifts, manufacturing going offshore, brands consolidating, and now this AI explosion.
Yeah.
By just leveraging its core flexibility and its absolute dominance in logistics, it's really a story of just constant adaptation.
Okay, let's dig into that. We got to start with the foundation, right?
Yeah.
Why does this city even exist in this, purely industrial kind of weird state?
Yeah.
And why was that the perfect setup for the computer revolution?
Yeah, the foundation is absolutely critical. So the City of Industry, it's in eastern LA County. It was incorporated way back in 1947. And it had this super specific vision from day one, purely industrial use, full stop. This wasn't an accident. The founders, they specifically wanted a regulatory environment completely free of residential constraints.
So they were actively trying to avoid the usual friction you get, noise complaints, zoning fights, homeowners worried about property values next to a factory.
Exactly. No school levies, none of that. Just pure business focus. And that choice, that structure, it laid the groundwork for everything that followed.
Right.
The sources confirm COI still has fewer than 500 residents. You got to have some residents to be a city legally.
Right. Okay, bare minimum.
Bare minimum. But it's home to over 2,000 businesses.
Yep.
Active businesses. Think about that. An economy built for a huge city, but run by a political entity the size of a tiny village.
Wow. So when the computer parts started flooding in from Asia in the 80s, needing a place to land.
Yeah. The zoning wasn't just easy. It was basically pre-approved, guaranteed. They didn't have to navigate, angry neighborhood associations or worry about future zoning changes restricting truck access or environmental reviews based on community impact. None of that existed.
Okay, so that leads straight into the logistics piece, the location.
The logistics super hub. It's physically in this perfect choke point. You mentioned the highways. It's literally right next to the 60, the 605, and the 57.
Major arteries.
Absolutely. Guarantees quick fight movement in pretty much any direction.
But, Southern California has other big logistics hubs, right? Like the Inland Empire is massive.
Right.
Why COI specifically for tech components? Those are high-value, time-sensitive things.
That's where the geography really matters. The Inland Empire, yeah, it's huge, but it's way further inland.
Longer drive, more traffic.
Exactly. Significant congestion usually between the ports and those warehouses. COI is much, much closer to the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. And for stuff like the latest chips, motherboards, GPUs, things where speed is everything, that shorter transit time, that's direct economic value. Huge savings, massive speed to market advantage.
So a container could literally come off the ship, hit the freeway, and be in a COI warehouse.
Within hours, usually. Ready for sorting, assembly, whatever.
Oh.
Bypassing a ton of that inland gridlock.
So that proximity, being closer to the port, could mean getting product to market weeks faster than competitors further out. And in the computer world, weeks is an eternity.
It's everything. Then you layer the local policy on top of that physical advantage.
Right.
The city didn't just allow industry, it actively encouraged it.
Yeah.
Land planning, tax structures designed to make industrial use super affordable. And crucially, the sources talk about this softening, the Mandarin word for easing or relaxing, of infrastructure rules, bureaucratic hurdles. Permitting was fast, setup was fast. It made it incredibly easy, almost frictionless, for these specialized hardware companies to just land and start operating almost immediately.
That's amazing. So it was this blank slate, basically, primed for easy entry, perfectly placed between Asia and the U.S. market, just waiting for the right industry.
Pretty much an economic accident waiting to happen, yeah.
Okay, so the stage is set. Logistics are perfect. But how did COI go from just handling, general imports to becoming the assembly point for the American computer industry?
Well, you got to remember the context of Southern California back then. By the late 70s, early 80s, the region already had a deep bench in tech. Aerospace, military stuff, semiconductors.
Right, the foundations were there.
Yeah. COI didn't invent the tech, but it became the crucial aggregation point, the place where parts came together, the assembly hub connecting Asian factories to American buyers.
And the trigger, the big bang for that, was the IBM PC in '81. That standardized things, opened the door.
Absolutely. IBM PC comes out and boom, the clone PC trend explodes. Because the architecture wasn't locked down, these small, nimble companies realized, hey, we can build systems that are 100% compatible.
But way cheaper.
Exactly. And this is where the immigration story just becomes completely intertwined with the business story. You can't separate them.
Yeah, the sources really emphasize this. It was largely immigrant entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
right, from China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, setting up shop in COI and the surrounding towns, Roland Heights, Walnut, El Monte.
These entrepreneurs were perfectly positioned. They had the language, the cultural ties, direct lines back to the booming manufacturing centers in Asia, especially Taiwan initially, where you had ASUS, Gigabyte, MSI just starting to take off, and later, of course, Shenzhen.
Okay.
They started small, importing basic stuff, memory sticks, power supplies, bare motherboards. And they used that COI warehouse system perfectly for the import store distribute model.
So container hits the port, goes straight to COI, parts get sorted, and then sold off or maybe assembled right there. Like a physical Amazon for computer parts back then.
That's a great way to think about it, yeah. And by the 90s, this whole thing scaled up massively. That was the peak, the golden age of the white box PC.
The white box. Unbranded, beige.
Totally. Unbranded, beige, maybe a little ugly, but cheap. And modular, flexible. That's what powered everything. Internet cafes popping up, small businesses getting computerized, the whole early DIY computer building scene.
Okay, but here's something I find really interesting. Why assemble it locally in LA? Labor costs were already higher than Asia, right? Why not just import the finished computer?
Two huge reasons, really structural drivers. First one, tariffs.
Taxes.
Yeah. Historically, importing a fully assembled computer, Zhangji & Co., often had higher tariffs than importing the individual components, Linjiang & Co. So by bringing in the parts and putting them together inside those COI warehouses, these companies could legally minimize their import duties.
A neat little loophole. Saved money, passed it on.
Directly to the price tag, yeah.
Yeah.
But the second reason, and maybe even more critical back then, was speed, market responsiveness. Think about how fast hardware changed in the 90s. A new Intel chip drops, a faster graphics card comes out. The COI builders could grab those new parts immediately and slap them into systems.
Right. Instantly updated.
Exactly. They didn't have to wait, 3, 4, 6 weeks for a container ship to bring pre-assembled systems from Asia. By the time those landed, they might already be outdated. Local assembly let them react to the U.S. market, which was super volatile, almost in real time.
Wow. That sounds like pure chaos, so super competitive, like tech bazaar.
Oh, totally chaotic, especially in the areas around COI where the actual retail and smaller integration happened. The whole ecosystem was dense, fierce. You had early wholesaler system builders like PC Club, Fry's Electronics.
Fry's, remember them?
Yeah. They relied heavily, fundamentally, on that COI supply chain. People tell stories from back then. Buyers literally driving between different warehouse blocks in COI, often run by different immigrant families competing head-to-head.
Haggling over parts.
Haggling over the price of a single RAM stick. Or a specific model of power supply. Shopping around in one afternoon just to shave a few pennies off their build cost. That kind of raw competition defined those early years.
And it wasn't just business, it sounds like. It became a whole culture. These Chinese malls, the computer cities nearby. They retail spots, sure, but also places where knowledge got exchanged.
Absolutely. They were vital community hubs. Places to buy stuff, yeah, but also to learn, to swap tips, to figure out compatibility issues. It created this unique culture where knowing the components, being able to customize, that was highly valued.
So you had the immigrant community's deep ties to Asian manufacturing, meeting this explosive American demand for cheap, customizable PCs.
And COI was the physical bridge, the essential middleman that made the whole white box phenomenon possible.
Right, so as we roll into the 2000s, things start to get pretty tough for that white box model. The very success of the 90s kind of painted a target on its back. The market changed.
Yeah.
Big time. Yeah, this is the era of the giants, right?
Yeah.
Dell, HP, eventually Lenovo, using their massive global scale to just optimize everything and crush those margins the COI guys lived on.
Precisely. They perfected supply chain optimization to a level the smaller players just couldn't dream of matching. And then, compounding that, demand for desktops starts to dip. Laptops are exploding.
Right, everyone wanted a portable.
Exactly. So you get these brutal price wars, cutting into profits even more. The COI companies, they were really forced into a corner, had to make hard choices.
Like what?
Either specialize, fast, pivot hard into, say, B2B wholesale or maybe networking gear, high-performance server stuff with better margins, or just get out of system building altogether and focus on peripherals, accessories, cables,
Okay, so the market pressure was intense.
Yeah.
But then came something even bigger, right? Not just competition, but global policy, the WTO shock.
Yeah, that was the truly seismic event, China joining the World Trade Organization in 2001. That single move just dramatically accelerated the maturity, the efficiency, the scale of the Chinese supply chain, particularly Shenzhen, Dongguan, Suzhou. Those places just exploded.
And what did that mean specifically for the COI assembly model? How did it hurt them?
It fundamentally altered the math on tariff and finished goods. China's export rules relaxed, barriers came down, and the cost and reliability of shipping fully assembled computers, Sengjinqiu, just got way better, way cheaper.
So that tariff advantage COI had, poof, gone.
Pretty much evaporated overnight. Why pay higher U.S. labor costs and deal with local assembly complexity when a finished branded PC could land from China, fully tested, ready to go, and potentially cheaper?
So COI's role kind of shrinks back from assembly center to mostly just distribution and warehousing again. Assembly becomes a niche, not the main game.
Exactly. It became a luxury, not an economic necessity for the mass market. And this happened alongside a really interesting cultural and business shift within COI itself. Well, the sources point to this handover in the mid-2000s. That first wave of entrepreneurs, mostly from Taiwan and Hong Kong, who'd really pioneered the component trading and assembly.
Yeah, the ones who built it up.
Right. They started gradually being replaced, or their businesses were bought out, by a new wave of immigrants coming directly from mainland China.
That's fascinating. Why the change? Different business model.
Kind of, yeah. It reflected the changing realities. The first wave were masters of navigating the early fragmented Asian supply chains, finding niche components, relying on deep personal connections. The mainland Chinese wave arrived with intimate knowledge of the massive, centralized, super-scaled Shenzhen ecosystem that WTO had turbocharged.
So they were more geared towards volume.
Often, yeah. More focused on high-volume, lower-margin goods. Maybe had better access to the larger pools of capital emerging from China's boom, allowing them to scale up warehousing operations quickly. It kept the import pipeline flowing, but shifted the internal dynamic towards bigger volume, even as overall margins were getting squeezed thin.
Okay, so that transition happens. Margins are tight. It sounds like a fragile situation leading into 2008. The great financial cleansing, as you called it.
Yeah, cleansing is maybe a harsh word, but 2008 hit this specific ecosystem incredibly hard. It was a perfect storm. The global economy freezes.
Demand just collapses.
Collapses for corporate servers and consumer PCs simultaneously. And if you're a COI company, your entire business is based on moving massive amounts of physical inventory, often on credit.
Right. They're using that inventory as collateral for loans to buy the next batch of inventory.
Exactly. Short-term credit lines. When demand vanished, the value of all that inventory on their warehouse floors just plummeted. Suddenly, it's worth way less. Banks got nervous, tightened credit immediately.
Uh-oh. Cash flow nightmare.
Complete death sentence for many. Inventory wasn't moving, it was devaluing, they couldn't service their debt. So you saw this huge wave of closures, liquidations, massive downsizing. It was brutal.
Who survived?
The ones who were either really well capitalized, just had deep pockets, or, crucially, the ones who had already successfully pivoted into those niche higher margin areas we talked about.
Like the gaming PCs, specialized workstations.
Exactly. Early high-performance computing, maybe some server components. Those areas held up a bit better, and the margins gave them some breathing room. The crisis basically forced everyone else out.
But wait, if only the niche players survived, wasn't that business too small? How could that sustain a whole city of industry with thousands of businesses? Did the scale just disappear?
Well, yes and no. The mass market scale, the low-margin white box volume, that was gone for good. It had moved. To Dell in Texas, to Lenovo building offshore, the crisis forced COI to finally accept that. It couldn't be the cheap PC factory for America anymore. So instead of being the city of, say, thousands of kind of similar mid-sized white box builders, it became an ecosystem of maybe hundreds of companies, but they were hyper-specialized, very resilient, very adaptable, focused on logistics, integration, loose hardware. It was a painful shakeout, but it actually prepared them perfectly for what came next, for AI.
Okay, so they made it through '08, leaner, more specialized. But the 2010s, generally speaking, weren't exactly boom years for traditional PC hardware, right? How did COI manage to find enough business to keep going? What were these niches?
They really leaned into a couple of key trends that were bubbling up. First, PC gaming just kept growing, especially esports. That high-performance DIY market, that needs constant upgrades, powerful custom stuff.
NFT enthusiasts.
Exactly. And second, even before the huge AI explosion we see now, there was already growing demand for specialized cloud servers, GPU computing, mostly from universities, researchers, early data science folks.
Okay, smaller scale but high value.
High value, high margin. And crucially, their whole way of operating had to evolve too. They couldn't just rely on guys driving up to the warehouse door anymore.
Right, the rise of online e-commerce.
Absolutely. You had giants like Newegg, which itself is deeply embedded in and reliant on that COI logistics network.
Oh, interesting connection.
Yeah. So the COI wholesalers, they had to get savvy online fast, setting up sophisticated inventory systems, integrating with online platforms, handling direct-to-consumer shipping, adding this whole complex e-commerce layer on top of their existing logistics power.
Which brings us right up to the present day. The deep learning revolution hits, suddenly everyone needs massive GPU power, and the city of industry gets this unexpected second act as the world's go-to custom GPU server shop.
It's kind of amazing, isn't it? The AI boom created this insatiable demand for compute, specifically for training these huge models. But here's the key thing. The really big players, Dell, HP, Supermicro, they're geared up for massive contracts, selling tens of thousands of identical servers to hyperscale data centers.
Standardized stuff, huge volumes.
Exactly. They are not set up generally to deal with the small to medium business or the university research lab or the AI startup that only needs, say, 5 servers or 50, especially if they need something custom.
And that gap, that's where COI steps in, leveraging that old DNA of customization.
Perfectly. COI companies became the go-to experts for custom GPU workstations, specialized AI servers. They can source and integrate everything from the consumer-grade RTX 4090s, which a lot of startups use to bootstrap,
Right, the gaming cards.
all the way up to the super high-end enterprise stuff like NVIDIA's A100s, H100s, whatever the client needs, often in small batches.
So what does that look like on the ground? How is a COI company building an AI server differently than, say, Dell? What's that flexibility mean in practice?
It's all about breaking the template. A big OEM works off rigid designs, mass production lines, an integrator in COI. They can handle totally bespoke requests. Okay, maybe you need a specific high-performance liquid cooling loop because you're packing GPUs super densely. They can source and install that. Maybe you need a custom chassis to fit a weird rack in your lab. They can figure that out. Specialized firmware tweaks. Small batch testing for a unique configuration.
Stuff a giant company wouldn't touch because it's too inefficient for their scale.
Exactly. It's high-touch, low-volume, high-value work. They fill that specific demand for the custom, high-end build that the mass market ignores.
And then COVID hits. Supply chains go haywire globally, and that actually helped COI.
Kind of ironically, yeah, it was a massive stress test for everyone. When the global chain seized up, you saw lead times from the big brands stretch out for months, 6 months, 9 months, even longer for some components.
Total chaos.
Total chaos. So who did people turn to? DIY builders, researchers, AI startups needing hardware now. They went straight to the local COI guys.
Because they could still get parts.
They had a better chance. Because of those deep often personal, decades-long relationships with suppliers in Asia sustained by generations of these immigrant networks. They could sometimes source components, navigate the mess, and assemble custom builds way faster, sometimes in weeks when the big guys were quoting months. Their flexibility and resilience really shone through when the global system broke down.
And this whole capability, it's not just about warehouses, it's about people too, right? Keeping the talent local.
That's a crucial piece the sources highlight. There's a self-sustaining loop. You've got local schools like Troy High has these amazing specialized tech magnet programs. Cal Poly Pomona has strong engineering feeding graduates directly into these local COI companies.
So the expertise stays.
Yeah, it ensures that the skills needed for complex assembly, integration, server configuration, IT support, it stays local. It maintains that talent pool right there, which is essential for doing cutting-edge server work.
Okay, so if we try to boil this whole decades-long story down, what are the absolute core, persistent things that let COI survive and now kind of thrive again?
I think it comes down to three main pillars. First, fundamentally, it is immigration-driven. You cannot tell this story without the specific communities, Chinese, Taiwanese, Hong Kong immigrants who brought the connections, the language skills, the deep supply chain knowledge that bridged Asia and America.
Okay, number one.
Second, logistical supremacy. That perfect physical location near the ports, combined with the city's unique political structure, purely industrial, makes it this unbeatable hardware hub for Southern California. Speed is king.
Got it. And third?
Third is that hard-won flexibility and customization. They basically gave up competing on scale years ago. Their profitable niche now is assembling small batches of highly customized, high-end machines, especially these specialized AI servers. It's a service the giant manufacturers can't or just won't offer. And that ability to adapt, to pivot, that's proven to be their most valuable asset. Hashtag tag outro.
Yeah, the city of industry, it's just this incredible case study in constant economic adaptation. We've seen it go from, that chaotic white box era in the 80s through the absolute grinder of the 2000s with trade wars and the financial crisis.
Right.
To this really surprising comeback in the 2020s, driven entirely by the very specific high-performance needs of AI. It really shows that logistics, combined with niche expertise, can still find a way to compete, even against the biggest global brands.
It really does. It proves that sometimes the most important stories aren't happening in the flashy glass towers of Silicon Valley, but in these anonymous-looking warehouse parks. So, looking forward, what's next? How do these COI firms keep this edge?
Well, sources suggest they're evolving again, moving beyond just building the boxes. A key thing to watch is the integration of AI-localized services.
You mean it?
Moving towards what some are calling an AI Now model. Not just selling the GPU server, but providing the whole package. Integrated edge computing solutions, network setup and maintenance, AI workstations fully configured for specific local industries like maybe a mid-sized hospital or a local design studio.
So it's not just hardware anymore, it's a managed solution. Higher value. Exactly. Shifting the value proposition significantly. Another angle is green assembly. With California's environmental focus, there's a push to integrate things like highly efficient cooling, maybe even solar power options for server racks, energy-saving components. Aligning with state policy makes business sense there.
Okay.
And finally, something really interesting, brand reframing. Getting away from that old cheap white box warehouse image, they're starting to brand their custom high-end stuff, using labels like California-made, or even terms that highlight their specific expertise, like Chinese wisdom, to signal quality, niche engineering, and reliability to buyers globally.
That narrative shift is huge. What started as just a weird zoning decision, a city without people, got leveraged by immigrant networks to build the first wave of affordable PCs. And now that same core flexibility is somehow powering the most advanced, most expensive tech revolution we've seen. It really makes you rethink where innovation actually happens. So I guess the question we want to leave everyone with is this. We focus so much on the big tech hubs, the famous names. But what other seemingly obscure, localized industrial pockets exist around the world? Places driven by unique geography, specific cultural networks. Could they be quietly building the next critical piece of global tech right under our radar?